Hello, it's Nadine here, and I'm here with this week's episode of Life, Health and the Universe. And this week I'm joined by Bronwyn Schweigerdt. Got it right?
Yep.
Welcome, Bronwyn. We did have
Thank
a
you,
kind of little
Nadine.
quick joke about how us Aussies probably want to call you Bronny.
I mean, I love it because in the United States, people are like, "Oh, that's such a unique name."
Really?
So I love it that anyone's even heard my name, much less have a nickname already for me. I love that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. The Aussies have this special knack of giving everyone a nickname. So yeah, you're not alone. So welcome, Bronwyn. I want to say Bronny again just because. Um, um, quick intro from me. You're a psychotherapist and anger expert. You're an author and a
Mhm.
podcaster. And you specialize, I believe, in marriage and family therapy. And you have, well, you work in helping people break free of depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and even psychosis by reconnecting them with their anger. That's, in a nutshell, you and your specialization. No doubt we're going to get into a whole bunch of really interesting stuff here. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So, welcome. Let me hand
Thank
over to you.
you.
You can fill in any gaps, and then we'll tease out all of the things.
Well, no, I mean, why don't you go ahead and dive in? Because I know you
Great.
are chomping at the bit.
Oh, okay. Well, so there was nothing else you wanted to add to that little intro?
No, because I think it'll get, unrevealed as we
Yeah,
go.
sure,
So,
cool.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you're adding a little bit of mystery.
Percent.
So what I'm going to say before we do get stuck in is I listened to part of one of your podcasts this morning, um, and it was an episode called "The Truth About Love, Health, and Freedom." And one thing that you said about yourself was that you're I can't remember the exact words, but you said something like, I'm kind of intense, or people tell me I'm intense, or something like that, right? And I thought, well, that's interesting. But what I gained from listening to your episode about you is that you have some hard truths that you're
Mm,
delivering, and they can be difficult for people to swallow. But I actually love that you have those hard truths, and you're not um, you don't express them in an unkind way.
mm,
It's actually a very generous way of expressing these nuggets of information you have, because we can often be led down the wrong path or believe that there's
mm,
something wrong with us that needs to be fixed, and you're
mm.
like, no, we're just getting it, we're just getting it wrong. So anyway, so let's warn the audience, we might be sharing some hard truths today with this intense woman. um, but really the information that we're going to unpack is invaluable, I believe. So let's dive in. My
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about anger. Let's just get straight in. I've got a whole bunch of notes written in, but one thing that you identify yourself as in is as an anger expert. So
Yeah,
let's start high level. What is anger? What is anger?
yeah. Good. That's a great place to start. Yeah, so anger, the reason why I'm an anger expert is because I believe it is the most misunderstood emotion thing, um, like in the whole universe, and not just by the general public, like the therapeutic community, the psychology community, the experts, even
Mm,
they just don't seem to know what to do with anger or what anger can do, especially when we disassociate from our anger, which most humans tend to do. So Yeah, I could say more about that, but what is anger? Anger is a secondary emotion, meaning there is always a primary emotion under the anger. And that primary emotion is some kind of pain, some kind of
Mm,
hurt. And it's usually, if not almost always, some kind of feeling of rejection. And when I say rejection, I mean everything synonymous with rejection. So feeling excluded, feeling some ways abandoned. And rejection can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. If we felt rejected as children
mm,
uh, chronically by our parents, which a lot of us did, and we don't even know, at a conscious level that we did. It's kind of unconscious. Then we have this big trigger. And whenever we perceive something to even feel or, smell like rejection, we get triggered and we show anger or we feel anger. So let me give you an example. Someone who is really hypersensitive to rejection because they, felt it throughout their young childhood, early childhood, but they haven't done the work, they're not aware of it, they can feel rejected just when another person, especially a person close to them, like a partner, a romantic partner or a child, has their own unique set of thoughts and feelings and even ideologies. And that feels like a rejection and they get angry. And so a lot of my clients that I work with, I only work, I should say, with individuals now, but
mm,
they grew up where they felt a lot of anger from the parent if they tried to differentiate, go through that process that we're supposed to go through in our teenage years and become our own unique people. And because the parent felt rejected when the child said, turns out I don't ascribe to those same beliefs that you raised me to have, or it turns out I have a different sexual orientation, or it turns out I have my own unique set of thoughts and beliefs, whatever that means. And so it's not, yeah, so it can hide under a lot of things. Like it could be hidden under, fundamentalism, religion, belief systems of the parents. But what it really is, it's anger because the parent feels rejected and abandoned because their trigger is so big. And so the child only knows, I don't know, it feels like my parent hates me.
mm,
And so often the child won't differentiate well or if at all because they can't tolerate the parent will abandon them back in some way and the child can't, really do that. And so, but that's one example. So anger, the anger that hurts us the most, that harms us, is rooted in feelings of rejection, betrayal, abandonment. The anger that I feel when someone cuts me off when I'm driving my car, that's not, I mean, yeah, it could lead to violence and it could physically hurt me, but that's not the anger that is going to make me psychologically sick or physiologically sick because I can just allow myself to go, you know what a jerk. He cut me off. But when I feel betrayed by my partner, by a parent, by my child, by a really close friend, I don't feel oftentimes entitled to feel those feelings. I want to disassociate from them. I don't want to be that vulnerable. So I dissociate from my anger, and then I get depressed. And that's actually how I ended up becoming a therapist. Is I dissociated from my anger at my spouse when and I was in a very severe depressive episode, and I went to multiple therapists at the time, and I was hardly functioning. And I sat there in the chair thinking, I'm barely functional right now, but I'm pretty sure I would still make a better therapist to me than this person would.
wow.
So part of that healing journey was me becoming a therapist. But anyway, my really severe depressive episodes in my life, and I've had about three that have been very severe and even like debilitating, were all from dissociated anger, whether it's at my spouse, at a boss, at a good friend, from feeling betrayed by them. And I just didn't feel entitled to really feel those feelings because we judge our feelings and we say, you shouldn't feel that way. And so we dissociate. And then the anger, I say anger is invisible, but it's more real than this chair I'm sitting on right now. It is so real. And it doesn't just evaporate, it stagnates in our bodies
Mm.
and it makes us sick. And so we get depressed, we get anxious, we develop mania, develop psychosis at times. We get autoimmune disorders, we get chronic migraines, insomnia, GI problems. All those things, I believe, are absolutely rooted in disassociated anger that we have suppressed into our bodies and we haven't channeled out in healthy ways.
Wow. I wrote a whole bunch of things there. That was a um where do I start? Um so when we feel so you sort of said when we feel rejected,
Mhm.
um we disassociate from that feeling. Would you say that then anger is the feeling that 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 would would usually come from that
It can, but
disassociation?
it
Or that we
can,
should
or
use anger as a way of expressing that feeling?
yeah, I mean, really. So our anger, I see anger as like the light on the dashboard of our car saying, "Hey, hey, hey, let me get your attention. Like something's wrong. Check under
Okay,
the hood."
okay,
And so when we and so we don't look at the dashboard light on our car and go, that's annoying. I'm just going to ignore that because it's so annoying. No, we say, oh, wow, there's something wrong that needs my attention, that needs
okay.
resolution. And so that's what anger is. And so if we can, reorient our relationship with our anger and not see it as evil,
Mm,
wicked, bad, sinful, whatever, shameful, um, and see it as, this is actually my body telling me something's wrong and I don't have to explode. I can just say, like what I really needed to say to my spouse, Steve, back then when that happened. So we had undergone a move and I was extremely lonely. Like I was dying of loneliness because I knew no one. I had no job. I just put my daughter in school. Like it was horrific. And what I needed to say to him, if I had been able to connect to my anger and to channel it out of my body in a healthy way, it would have led me to say, you know what, Steve, I'm so lonely right now. And you can tell I'm really struggling. You can see how depressed I am. And what I need from you is just to look me in the eyes and validate how I'm feeling. Just say, you know what, Bronwyn, this looks so hard. I see how hard it is for you. And it's breaking my heart. If he had just done that, I would have felt like $1,000,000. I would have
mm,
felt not less alone because I was feeling so, so lonely. And then when he looked at me, I felt like he kind of had this look in his eye like, what's wrong with you? Can you just get it together? And so
mm,
now I felt more lonely. I felt like my attachment partner is now rejecting me
yeah.
too, or, estranging me in a way. And yeah, if I could have just said that, it would have been really helpful because I know he would have stepped up to the plate and done it. But I didn't do that and he didn't know what to do. And so the depression just kept spiraling. But,
Mm,
so channeling our anger doesn't mean yelling and screaming. It just means saying something like, you know what, Nadine, that's not okay when you say that. Like, that's not okay.
mm, yeah,
That's it.
yeah. That partly answered the next question I was going to ask, and so I kind of, yeah, I guess thinking about this idea of anger, because what we generally think of as anger is like that explosive, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's like a reaction to a feeling, but it comes outward, and it can often be like an attack. And I
Mhm.
guess when you say that it's often can be a sign of rejection, for example,
Yeah.
that's kind of like a defense mechanism, right? Push
Hmm.
away, defend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other side of it is that disassociation. And it's when
Right.
we disassociate that we can experience those feelings of, or we can experience depression, anxiety,
Yeah.
those kind of things. When there's outward anger, I would expect that there's still those um, there's still the possibility of, well, we're not getting to the bottom of it, right? We're not getting to the bottom of the root cause. And so, yes, there's
Yeah.
that explosive or there's that
Yeah.
disassociation, but they
Yeah.
both can lead to the same outcomes in terms of how our mental health is affected. Which is that the correct
Yeah. I mean, they both
understanding?
can.
Or
The explosive people, they're the ones that everyone gives the attention to, for better or
mm,
for worse. They get all the attention. And that, so it's kind of like, when I talk to my clients, it's like all they think of is, oh, that's aggressive.
mm,
And the only other alternative is to be passive, or I guess passive aggressive. But really, there's this healthy place called being assertive, and so it's like no one thinks about that. No one thinks about, oh, I can just be assertive and say, hey, that really hurts my feelings when you make fun of me right now. I don't have to explode, and I don't have to dissociate. I can just be assertive.
mm.
And and yeah, so the explosive people do get all the attention. Everyone kind of caters to them. And so that we could talk more about that because that's no good either. But we all just need to say, you know what? I'm angry. These are my feelings. I'm only responsible for my feelings. I'm not responsible for anyone else's feelings. We're all responsible to other people, but not for
Mm.
other people. We are only responsible for our own feelings. And so if someone explodes with me, I would say, wow, it sounds like you're really angry. Good thing I'm not responsible for your anger. You are. Um, that's not a really responsible way to be responsible for your anger. If you want to back up and use your words and tell me what's going on, I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to work with you, but I'm not going to work with, like, temper tantrum throwing. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to expect you to be an adult, and I'm going to be an adult as well.
Wow. Yeah, I was um still more questions. You
Yeah.
mentioned the like driving in the car thing, and
Yeah.
telling someone that they're a douchebag or whatever,
Yeah.
for cutting you off, and that's not the same. But like when people are extremely angry, or they take it out on other people, or if they do become violent, would you say that
Hmm.
that's a progression of the same thing, but at a more extreme level, or are you kind of saying that that's a different?
I think, no, that's a great question. I think that people who are violent, so I live in the United States. We have a lot of violence here. We have a lot
Mm,
of gun violence. We have a lot of driving violence. We talked about driving. But I really think that the people with the guns who are irresponsible, the people who are irresponsible drivers, and there are many more irresponsible drivers than gun owners. They don't get all the media, but um, but I think they're all just taking out their anger because they can't. They feel like they can't take it out. They can't display it. They can't channel it out in a healthy way with their parents, with their
mm,
spouse, which whoever it is. And so it's just, gonna come out somewhere. I think a
mm,
lot of people, when they get behind the uh the wheel, they just need to feel powerful. And it's like, oh, this
mm,
is the one place I can feel powerful, because they don't feel that at their home.
right. Yeah,
So I'm not condoning that by any means, but I think I see it as symbolic of,
it's another
some.
expression of that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because if you're a healthy, functioning person and you're assertive and you're getting all your needs met, you don't need to feel powerful on the road. You don't need to feel powerful with a gun. You already feel powerful
Mm.
because you're not betraying yourself on a daily basis. You're being true to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Cool.
that's the good kind of power.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess that kind of, I guess that summarizes, there's no such thing as an angry person.
Yeah, I don't like the term angry person
Mm.
because to me it's like, if someone says, "Well, I'm not an angry person," I would say, "Well, are you a breathing person?" Because we all have anger, like all humans have anger. And I really want to like help break down that stereotype that only some people have anger
Mm.
and some don't, because that's not
Mm.
true. All humans have anger. And, really, anger, it's not shameful. It's not bad. It's just a normal human experience. And it's there for a good reason. It's there to say something's wrong. It's not there, if we can start to see it more as that warning light than as something we need to judge. So we can judge our actions, we can judge our behaviors, but we don't judge our feelings. Feelings are not right or wrong, they're not good or bad um, in their essence. It's what we do with our feelings. So again, if we only see anger as violence or verbal violence, then yeah, but that's how someone's channeling their anger. That's not their actual feelings of anger. Um, so we really need to stop judging feelings. Feelings are involuntary and they're there for a reason.
Yeah, it's really, God, well, obviously you work in the field, so you know all about it. But like I have two kids, 8 and 9, and they have a whole range of feelings. But
Yeah,
and it can be really hard, right, to not say settle
yeah,
down, like
yeah,
stop crying, like all of those things, or
yeah.
calm down, or what's wrong with you, like.
Mhm.
I try to be quite aware of those things, and like not sending my kid to their room because they're behaving inappropriately with what they're feeling. It's like we sort of trying to allow them that
Well, we don't want to
experience
just
and not be
allow.
rejected when it's happening.
Right, right. Because, yes, so that's a good point. When a kid gets sent to their room
Mm.
for being angry, we don't need to say that's shameful. We're teaching them
Mm.
that's shameful.
Yeah.
And they're going to make that association. And they're going to be the one who come to me when they're an adult and go, I'm not an angry person, but I just have panic attacks all the time. And I'll say, oh my God, okay. So you are angry, but you're dissociating.
Uh,
That's why you feel the panic. So yeah, so what we need to do for one another is attune.
mm.
That's what we need to do. And that starts with, like what I teach with my in my parenting classes is just saying, hey Johnny, you seem really angry. What do you think's going on?
Mm.
And then maybe Johnny's like, well, my teacher made fun of me in front of the whole class. And then you say, wow, I bet that was humiliating. So you just name
Yeah.
the feelings. You're
Yeah.
angry, that felt humiliating. Um, instead of dismissing, we name it, we validate. And what that does is it diminishes
Mm.
their feelings, their anger, those feelings diminish because what's shareable is bearable. So when our kids or anyone, adult or child in our life, when we can attune to them, when we can listen, when we can validate their anger, um, they're actually feeling better because they know we're sharing those feelings. Those feelings are being shared now.
Mm.
And that's actually how we do like de-escalation. That's what they teach people who are first responders who
Okay.
engage in de-escalation techniques is just validating the people's feelings. It's that simple.
Wow. And I think that the kids can be our best teachers if we choose to learn from them, because they also ride out those emotions, right? they they can be happy one minute, crying the next, and then happy again the next minute. And they're not like
I
I've
mean,
said to my daughter, oh, ages ago, I was like, oh,
yeah,
sorry I was, angry with you, or, I blew
yeah,
up or whatever it was. And she'd be like, when?
wow,
Because it's like, it's done, it's over.
yeah,
And it's kind of like, yeah, it's
yeah,
interesting. Um, oh, right. I'm just looking at my notes now. So, well, let's stay with the children for a minute
yeah,
while we're there,
sure, yeah,
and talk about how we can raise truly resilient children.
hmm,
I guess we've touched on it
yeah,
a bit, right?
yeah. So, I think as adults, as parents, we put way too much emphasis on words. Like, I'll have people ask me, how can I teach my son that he matters or that he's important? Like, how can I phrase it? And I'm like, you don't need to say it. In fact, you shouldn't say it because that's not going to mean anything. What you do is when he has a set of feelings, which he will, like you're saying, you show him his feelings matter by like making eye contact, giving him your full attention, and just listening if he's willing to talk, or if he's not willing to talk, you just name, your face looks really sad right now. Johnny, I'd like to hear what's happening. Tell me, are you feeling sad? Are you feeling some other way? So just showing that we care, that's attunement. The eye contact, the facial recognition, naming what we're seeing. Oh, your shoulders are kind of slumped. I'm noticing that, you look kind of, you know, dejected. That teaches our kids that they matter when we pay attention to them
Mm,
and their feelings. That's how they learn that they matter. So us saying, "Hey Johnny, you matter to me." That doesn't do anything. We have to do it. Talk is cheap and we have
mm,
to, and that's how they realize they matter. And we give them like this template where even just doing that every so often with them, it's this template for them and their brain, and they're like, oh, I matter to my mom, and I matter. And then they go out into the world and they have like this inner template that they matter, and they're not going to put up with the abusive boss because they matter. They're not going to stay in the abusive relationship because they know they matter. So it's so powerful what just attuning to them, validating their feelings, you know, does. We have no idea, but we are absolutely creating resiliency in them when we do that.
yeah. Wow. Cool. Sorry, I'm just I'm going through my notes again. I don't want to
Yeah.
miss out on any on any of the good stuff. Do
Yeah.
you did I think you said that you work mostly with individuals now. Do you work with children as as well,
I
or
I
more
work with
adults,
teens. I
teens?
do mainly work with teens, just because I do it remotely. So children's
Okay.
usually in person with
Yeah.
toys and
Yeah.
puppets and that kind of
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Um, how long have you been working in this field of work?
Um, about 10 years now. So it's my second career. It took me falling into that
Yes.
depressive episode. But yeah, you know, again, I just want folks to know, if you're seeking out therapy, it might take a lot of dating different therapists to find
Sure.
someone who can attune to you because, I hear horror stories from my clients of, I mean, they're horrible to me when I hear them, about what experience they've had with other therapists before they came to me, where a lot of therapists will try to talk you out of your feelings. They'll be very invalidating. A lot of therapists have no idea what to do with anger, and so they teach anger management. So
Mm,
let's just take some deep breaths and you know count and go for a walk. And it's like, well, that can manage my symptoms, but let's get to the root. Kind of like you were saying, like I'm an intense person. I want to get to the root. Let's resolve the root problem so we don't have to waste time managing symptoms.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to stick with that line of inquiry that we're going with now. I would be keen to come back to the teens, just to
Yeah.
hear some of your insights with those that group of individuals. But you've mentioned in some of the materials I've read of yours that, where is it? Something about medication, and that
Talk
and I
about
don't think
managing
I've got it here.
symptoms. Yeah.
Oh, here it is. Why most types of therapies and medications don't work. So let's talk about some of those things. Like
Yeah.
what be traditional therapies? Why
Yeah.
do people get medicated? Like, and some of
Yeah.
those things, and like why you believe they don't work.
Well, I mean, they can work to manage symptoms, but that's the best that, especially the drugs, that's all they're doing is managing symptoms. So
Mm,
if that's what you want and you don't want to actually work on the root problem, I mean, I guess they could have their place if your symptoms are out of control for a time, but that's not a solution, just managing the symptoms. So
numbing your,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, let's get to the root. Let's
existence.
figure out what is going on. And once we unroot it, once we bring resolution, then you should be able to wean off those meds.
Okay.
And I've had, clients who were heavily medicated for all kinds of things, just wean off all their meds. It's really awesome. So yes, there's hope. There's no need, in my belief, if we're getting to the root problem, to stay perpetually on any medication. As far as traditional or different therapies, it's interesting. Um, they kind of present in graduate school, oh, there's all these different therapeutic modalities you can pick from, and they're all equal more or less, and they're not. And, no one really, yeah. So it's hard because a lot of therapists, we're only given about 2 years of graduate school. Psychologists have to get they have to do a dissertation, but I imagine they do the same amount of actual classwork. So, you know, we'd like to say we're experts, but, I remember too in grad school, they say, oh, you're going to learn as you go. And I'm like, well, can you give me more than that? I don't want to learn on these clients. I don't want them to be my guinea pigs. And that's in essence what they are, because we have to get, 3,000 hours to get licensed anyway
Okay.
as interns. But anyway, so what I'm saying is there's not a lot of hand holding to show you really what works as a therapist. And so people go to different, ideologies, different theoretical models. So some of the common ones right now, one is called DBT, which stands for dialectical behavioral therapy. It's I I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say I have found it absolutely worthless. Yeah, they're like, oh, it's evidence-based, short term, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I actually did the research on that. Very, very short term, if at all. And only in some populations does it show any improvement. So what
Could
that's
you, sorry,
doing is,
before we go on, could we go on?
yeah,
Could you give us an example of what that looks like in a session?
yeah. So I'll
Sorry to
so
interrupt.
yeah, no, no. So we call it DBT, and so a lot of insurance, they'll send you to like a group therapy, and
Okay.
you're just doing DBT groups. Hopefully,
Okay.
this is going to change soon, but they're just like, okay, so when you have a difficult feeling, just imagine there's a stop sign in your head. Just say stop, just hold up a stop sign. And it's like, wow, I'm all better. Thank you. That was like, so it's stuff like that. Or like, if you're having difficult feelings, go into the freezer and hold a piece of ice until, just focus on the ice until you feel better. And it's just like these things like that where I'm like, well, okay. And breathing and mindfulness, and those things aren't bad in and of themselves, but are they really getting to the resolution? Oh no, they are definitely not giving anyone insight or self-awareness to what is bothering them in the first place. And a lot of therapy treats the individual coming to therapy like oh, you're the problem. And so it looks
Mm,
as at the problem like it's intra-personal, like as in, Nadine, you're my client, so the problem is within you.
mm,
But see, anger is always interpersonal. It's never an
mm.
intra problem.
Okay.
It's interpersonal. And so unless you have therapy that really looks at the relational aspect of, what's going on and harming you and hurting you in your mental health, your physical health, then it's not going to do any good, because it's always relational. It is always relational. I can just say that flat out. So if I'm telling you, just think some positive thoughts, Nadine, and take some deep breaths, and you know, um, get a jasmine scented pillow for when you go to sleep at night. Like, that's nice, but I could Google that. Like, you could Google that, and like, you need a person, you need a person, your therapist, hopefully, to be a person and to listen and
Mm,
really understand like what is going on, and to really give you a framework, a paradigm for why you're being affected the way you are by this relationship that you're in. And you need someone to help you have insight and understanding, and without that, it's just not going to work.
yeah, right. Because as I guess as you said, even with the like, if someone's not being prescribed medication, if they're being told strategies, like breathe through it or hold the piece of ice or
Yeah,
whatever it might be, that's
yeah,
kind of like still looking at the symptom, right? It's like, oh, I sense anger coming. I'm just gonna do this for a minute. Um,
right.
Rather than what you're doing, which is guiding your client to get down into that place that might be pretty well hidden, I would expect,
Yes and
the
no.
seed of the anger comes from.
Kind of yes and no, because people start talking immediately about the relationships
Uh-huh.
immediately in
Okay.
therapy, but they don't really, they need, so we're all blind to ourselves. We
Mm,
are absolutely all blind to ourselves. So we need another person to be a mirror. And that's what a good therapist is. They are a mirror, giving you a true reflection of yourself. Not, people in our lives will mirror us, but they will give us a distorted reflection. And so a good therapist will give you a true reflection. So you can start to learn to trust yourself. You can start learn, okay, I'm not crazy. This person is gaslighting me. Okay, I'm starting to connect with my anger now. I'm starting to learn about boundaries. I'm starting to be assertive. I'm going to channel this anger that I'm getting validated right now into boundaries, into assertiveness, into
okay.
accountability.
Okay. Cool. So, if you've had some, you've been working with people and sort of identified that these feelings of anger, when they are internalized, they can lead to dis-ease, um,
Yes.
physical and emotional, um,
Mhm.
depression, anxiety, bipolar, psychosis, but you also mentioned gastrointestinal issues. Um, what have you seen happen with the some of the people that you've worked with when you have started to um,
Mhm.
help them to uh,
Yeah.
validate their experience, channel
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
feelings?
Yeah. Well, I can give you a lot of examples, but one of my favorites is a gal I've been working with for maybe a year and a half now. And she had severe psychosis. And when I say that, so that can mean delusional thoughts or hallucinations. She didn't have delusions, she had hallucinations. She had auditory, but I think more visual hallucinations. Um, and she thought she was nuts. I mean, she thought she was absolutely insane. And I was just like, I think your mom's the insane one. Sounds like she's evil. And she's like,
Oh,
oh. I think you might be right. And she's like, I've been in therapy since I was like a young teen, and you're the first person who's actually like reflected the truth back to me. My mom is evil, and I just needed someone else to see that for me. And so, anyway, she worked to completely extricate herself from her mother successfully. Um, and she's had no psychosis. She's had no anything. She's gotten off all her meds, all her
Wow.
meds. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do
So it
you
worked.
see that like that's been a pretty you've both been pretty committed doing that for a year and a half to get to the point that you're
Yeah.
at now. Do you when you're working with someone and they've, reached this point, do you set them free? Or
Yeah.
does the relationship continue?
I always, will check in with them, but I say, I'm here if you need me in a pinch. So you can just reach out, you're free to launch. But
Mm,
it's nice to know they could always come back to me for
yes.
like a check in if something comes up, that they weren't planning, because those things do happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, this is on a kind of a bit of a tangent, but not really. So the episode that I listened to of your podcast, that I about halfway through it, was the truth about love, health, and freedom. And
Hmm.
and the reason I wanted to talk to you about this, because you were talking about your own relationship with your mum, and
Mm.
almost what forgive me if I have misinterpreted this or said it the wrong way, but almost a relief that you had when she passed away, and that there was some kind of, people were surprised at how you expressed that. Um, so I guess, and then talking about this client that you had who had obviously had a dysfunctional
Hmm.
relationship with her mum, and
Hmm.
like needing to separate herself from that
Yeah. Yeah.
in order to heal.
Hmm.
You're a mum. So like, I think, and I'm a mum and I've got a daughter. Have you
Hmm.
got a daughter or son?
Yeah.
Yeah, daughter.
Yeah. I have a daughter.
So so how I don't know where this question's kind of going, but hopefully you'll just pick up on what I'm trying to get at. The relationship between mother and daughter can be difficult.
Yeah. I
um
mean, absolutely. I mean, mine. So I have a whole episode, not whole, a good chunk of one of mine is about my own very difficult relationship with my
uh-huh.
daughter. We're good
Okay.
now,
Okay.
but yeah. So what is that one called? It's called How to Get Over a Betrayal in the Best Way, How to Recover
Okay.
from Betrayal in the Best Way.
Okay.
So, oh yeah. So yes. So I'll just say we all screw up our children. We all do.
Yes.
We
It's
all
like
do.
we know
And
that imprinting start is like from 0 to 7, and it's not until you're at about year 8 that you go, oh shit, that's too.
yeah,
I was too deep in all of the things
yeah.
at the
No,
time
we
to realize
absolutely
it.
all screw up our children. And I am, yeah, so I'm very open about how I hurt my daughter, and she felt very betrayed by me. So the same move that I mentioned earlier, where I fell into the depression, she felt very abandoned by me because, if you've ever been in depression, it's like you've lost yourself. And so she was 5 at the time, and she knew her mom was still alive physically, but there's no like smiles anymore. There's
Mm,
no eye contact. There's just like, I'm just like dead inside. And also, she'd gone through the same move as I had. And I think it was very difficult for her. And I never asked her a question. I never attuned to her. I never, showed any concern about, her losing her friends and her community and her dog, which was like her sibling that she had lost just before we moved. So she felt very rejected and abandoned by me at that time. And she acted like she hated me. I became like her enemy for the next 14 years. And
wow.
it was horrible. And it took until the last year and a half, 2 years, that I even really understood where my rupture with her happened and what my contribution was. And so I've had to work very hard to win back her trust and apologize and say, you know what, Edie, I know that you felt absolutely rejected by me. And I was in a depression. I know you understand that now because you're an adult, but I want to let little Edie know that she wasn't the problem.
Mm,
That the rejection she felt wasn't an Edie problem, it was a mom problem. And I just want you to know that. And I'm so sorry. And, we now have the best relationship I ever could have asked for. She's 20, but it took that. And so, um, but then we have other kinds of parents who won't ever admit
mm,
they made a mistake. They won't ever own their failures. And of course, we're going to fail. We're going to fail all the time. And they won't do that because they're not healthy enough. They're not psychologically well or willing to do that. And so I don't want, I don't advocate that all my clients or my listeners extricate themselves from their parents. But if you have someone who, like my mother, who actually, is the problem, is the problem for your depression, your anxiety, because of just being, evil. I would say evil in a way where they're just chronically rejecting you, or mean or cruel, or saying or doing cruel or mean things with the intent to hurt you. Yeah, you have to separate yourself. You absolutely do, because that's not a healthy parent. And a healthy parent would want what's best for the child, and for the child to flourish at all costs. And so you have to do that for yourself. You have to be the healthy parent for yourself.
mm. Yeah. That so there's more uh evidence, I think. Like, I haven't read any papers on it or anything, to sort of show that when we heal ourselves, we can actually heal our lineage backwards and forwards. Because one would only,
Mm,
you can only assume that if you've had a parent who is evil, as you
yeah,
say, cruel, unattentive, that they've had their own wounding and that they're just
sure,
sort of carrying
of
that
course.
down.
Yeah. Mhm.
How does that sit with you, just in your own experience? Like, you've obviously had come to some deep realizations about the relationship you had with your mum and some relief when she passed away. Do you still feel like there's been a healing between that relationship you had with her because you've kind of, I don't know, healed yourself, or um
Yeah, I do. You know, s- when I'm doing better at age 53 now than I ever have in my adult life. I myself had very severe insomnia for about 30 years, off and on, but a lot of on
mm,
during those 30 years. Yeah. And I attribute that to, you know, I think I was angry at myself, and out of awareness of it, because I was betraying myself by maintaining that, or trying to maintain a relationship with my parent. So when I finally woke up and said, you know what, this is really wrong. And I'm okay to say that. Like, um, this is a revelation. You guys are evil. And unless you change, this is not going to work, like having a relationship. And the minute I was able to do that, I was able to sleep like a baby. I have
wow,
been sleeping the last few years better than I ever have in my life. Like, the insomnia for 30 years is a thing of the past. So I really
wow,
believe my body was angry at me for betraying myself,
mm,
overlooking, trying to kind of not see some things that at some level I did see, right?
right. Wow, thank you for that
Yeah.
insight. So let's close up. Like, I still have a whole page full of things that we could talk about. But if there is anything that you would kind of recommend that people can do, or um, if they are if they are experiencing some of these things, like, how do we start to work with our own anger? Is it about creating those boundaries? Like,
Yeah, so I would say we start with healing our relationship with our anger.
mm,
So, starting with, you know what? My anger is here for a reason and it's here to help me. It's here to inform me and give me wisdom. I don't have to override it. And I also don't have to explode. I can just say, huh, I'm feeling kind of annoyed right now. And I can feel that. I can feel that and I can know it's valid. So we start with that. And as we start to reconnect to our anger and validate it for ourselves, I believe that's how we heal our relationship with ourselves. So
mm,
I believe healing our relationship with anger is healing our relationship with ourselves, like our inner child. I believe they're one and the same. And as our inner child starts to trust us because we're validating her, we're attuning to her, we're advocating for her with boundaries, with assertiveness, with accountability, we integrate. And that's really the goal of good therapy is, or, just becoming a whole person is integrating. And that's really what, when we know we've healed. And like I said, now at 53, I'm sleeping better than I ever have in my life, but I'm also just happier. I'm just happy all the time. And I've been the opposite for a long time. So
mm.
when you're whole, when you're integrated, you're not perfect, but you're whole, you're complete, you're integrated. And that is worth everything. So we do that by being true to ourselves.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate that close. If our listeners want to find you, best ways to do that, would you want us to direct them? Well, we can give them website, podcast, the
Yeah.
title of your book,
Well, let's
all of the
start with my
things.
podcast.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, that's why I have it. It's for people who will never be my clients, just to get all these things out
Yeah, yeah,
to everyone else.
brilliant.
And it's called Angry at the Right Things,
Yeah,
and it's found wherever you subscribe to your
yeah, great.
podcast.
We'll put a link to that in the notes, and
Okay.
yeah, it's a great listen. So I'll be tapping into that myself. Thank you so much for joining us, Bronnie.
Thank you, Nadine.
Have a great rest of your day, and yeah, I appreciate the time you've taken with us today. Thanks a lot.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye.